Colonel Zarthok of the Krunian Imperial Guard stood at the edge of the training arena, his forearms crossed in a gesture of obvious disdain. His scales, polished to a mirror sheen, reflected the harsh lights of the Galactic Military Academy's combat facility. Behind him, 300 cadets from 17 different species watched in anticipation. Before him stood the reason for his contempt, a human. "This," Zarthok announced, his voice carrying across the arena with the resonance of a being who had commanded armies, "is what the Confederation has sent us. A human. From a gravity-light world. With thin bones and weaker muscles than a Zenthari child." Cadet Marcus Chen stood at attention, his expression carefully neutral. He was of average height for a human, which made him shorter than most species present, with a lean build that seemed almost fragile compared to the hulking forms surrounding him. His uniform, standard issue for the Academy, seemed to hang loose on his frame. "Tell me, human," Zarthok continued, his primary eyes narrowing, "what is your lifting capacity? Your running speed? Your reaction time compared to the galactic standard?" "Below average in all categories, sir," Marcus replied, his voice steady. A ripple of amusement passed through the assembled cadets. The Krunian colonel's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Below average. Yet somehow, your species petitioned for entry into the Confederation's elite military training program." He gestured with his upper right arm. "Perhaps you are here to serve as an example of what not to be?" Marcus said nothing. He had learned, in his 3 weeks at the Academy, that silence was often the best response. Zarthok turned to address the crowd. "Let me demonstrate why physical superiority matters in combat. Cadet Torval, front and center." From the ranks emerged a Krunian who made even Zarthok look small. Torval stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scales darker and more pronounced, marking him as a warrior breed. He had been the Academy's combat champion for 2 consecutive cycles, undefeated in over 60 matches. His forearms rippled with muscle that could bend titanium. "Torval is my apex student," Zarthok declared. "Strength index, 847. Speed rating, 92nd percentile. Reflexes, enhanced military grade. He has defeated opponents from every major species in the Confederation." The colonel's gaze fell back on Marcus. "Human, you will spar with him. No weapons. Standard combat protocols. This will teach you, and everyone here, the importance of physical dominance." Marcus stepped forward into the combat circle, his heart rate steady despite what he knew was coming. He had watched Torval fight before. Had studied his patterns, his techniques, his unconscious tells. But more importantly, Marcus had studied his assumptions. "Begin." Zarthok commanded. Torval moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. His approach was textbook Krunian combat doctrine: use superior reach and strength to overwhelm the opponent quickly. His forearms spread wide, preparing to grapple and crush. Marcus didn't retreat. Instead, he did something that made no sense to any observer. He moved forward, directly into Torval's attack range. The Krunian's upper arms swept inward, expecting to catch the human in an inescapable hold. But Marcus had already dropped low, his center of gravity shifting beneath Torval's reach. Human flexibility, the curse of their lighter bone structure, became an advantage. Marcus's hand struck out, not with power but with precision, hitting the nerve cluster on Torval's lower right leg that every Krunian possessed. Torval's leg buckled, just slightly, just for a fraction of a second. But that was enough. Marcus used the momentum of his forward motion, augmented by the gravity that his weak world had conditioned him to fight against every day of his life. He wasn't trying to overpower Torval. He was using Torval's own mass against him. A pivot, a shift of weight, and the application of leverage that humans had perfected over millennia of being physically inferior to nearly every predator on their planet. Torval's eyes widened in surprise as his balance failed. His forearms, so powerful for grappling, flailed uselessly at empty air. The 8-foot warrior, undefeated champion of the Academy, tilted backward. The impact of Torval hitting the ground shook the arena. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. 3 seconds. That's how long the entire exchange had lasted. Marcus stepped back immediately, falling into a ready stance, waiting for Torval to rise. But the Crunian lay stunned, his respiratory system laboring to recover from having the wind knocked out of him. Around the arena, 300 cadets sat in absolute silence. Colonel Zarthok's scales had shifted to a pale gray, a color Marcus had learned indicated shock in Crunians. "What? How did you?" Marcus finally spoke. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Zarthok nodded, seemingly unable to form words. "You called me weak, Colonel. And by your standards, I am. I can't lift half what a Crunian can. I can't run as fast as a Velcara. My bones would shatter under a punch that a Zenthari child could withstand." Marcus gestured to Torval, who was now sitting up, his expression one of bewildered respect. But humanity didn't become the dominant species on Earth through strength. We did it through adaptation. Through using what we had against opponents who had more. Marcus walked to the center of the arena, his voice carrying now. Every species here evolved to be strong, fast, or durable. Humans evolved to be persistent. To think. To find the weakness in anything that was stronger than us and exploit it. We spent 10,000 years hunting animals that could kill us with a single blow. We learned to turn their strength into our weapon. He turned back to face Zarthok. "You asked what my lifting capacity was, sir. You never asked about my knowledge of leverage, of physics, of biology. You never asked how many years humans studied hand-to-hand combat because we had to compensate for being weaker than everything else on our planet." Torval had risen now, shaking his head to clear it. Instead of anger, his face showed something unexpected, admiration. "The human is correct, Colonel. I had him in strength. In reach. In every physical category. But he knew my biology better than I did. He knew exactly where to strike, exactly how to move. I was fighting an opponent. He was solving a problem." Zarthok stood silent for a long moment. Around them, the cadets began to murmur, their perception of the small human fundamentally altered. The colonel finally uncrossed his arms, a gesture of respect in Crunian culture. "I called you weak," Zarthok said slowly. "I was wrong. Strength is not merely physical. Your species learned that lesson long before joining the Confederation." He addressed the assembled cadets. "Let this be a lesson to all of you. The human did not win through power. He won through understanding. Through adaptation. Through making his opponent's advantages irrelevant." Marcus inclined his head respectfully. "With respect, Colonel, I didn't win. I demonstrated a principle. Torval is still the superior fighter in most scenarios. But combat isn't about most scenarios. It's about the specific moment in front of you and how you adapt to it." Torval approached Marcus, extending his upper right arm in a gesture of respect. "I underestimated you, human. I won't make that mistake again. Perhaps you could teach me this leverage concept?" Marcus gripped the massive arm. "I'd be honored. And perhaps you could teach me how to maximize what strength I do have? I have a feeling we can learn from each other." As the cadets filed out, their conversations animated with analysis of what they'd witnessed, Colonel Zarthok remained behind. He watched Marcus and Torval talking, already beginning to exchange techniques, two warriors from vastly different evolutionary paths finding common ground. The colonel's scales shifted to a deep blue, the color of contemplation among his people. He had spent 40 cycles in military service, had fought in 12 campaigns, had trained thousands of warriors. Yet today, a human had taught him something fundamental about the nature of strength. Physical power could be measured, quantified, compared. But the ability to turn disadvantage into advantage, to make weakness irrelevant through understanding and adaptation, that was something that transcended mere muscle and bone. Perhaps, Zarthok thought, humanity's petition to join the Confederation's military programs wasn't a mistake after all. Perhaps, in their fragility, they had developed something the galaxy's stronger species had never needed to learn, the art of winning when you had no right to. And in the wars to come, when the Confederation faced enemies stronger, faster, and more numerous than themselves, that arc might be exactly what they needed. The colonel looked at Marcus Chen one more time, this seemingly weak creature from a gravity light world, and felt something he rarely experienced, uncertainty about who the apex predator really was.